The best response is results, not explanations. That's a principle most people overlook in their journey toward personal development. We live in a world where everyone wants to talk about what they're going to do. They want to post about it, announce it, gather applause before the action even begins. But real transformation doesn't happen in public. It happens in the quiet places, in the early mornings and late nights, in the sacrifices no one sees. And when you focus on producing results instead of justifying your process, you elevate beyond the need for validation. People will doubt you. That's part of life. They'll question your dreams, your path, your pace. And if you're not grounded in purpose, you'll feel the urge to explain yourself. But explanations are weak substitutes for execution. They are energy leaks. Every time you feel the need to tell someone why you're moving the way you are, you take your eyes off the mission. And that's dangerous, because every second you spend convincing someone else is a second you're not investing in your own progress. Results are undeniable. You don't have to argue with someone about whether you've changed when your body, your business, your bank account, your character, and your confidence testify for you. See, results speak a language everyone understands, even your critics. That's why focusing on results is powerful. You don't have to say a word, and yet your presence commands attention. That's the kind of influence you want. Not hype, not noise, but gravity. When you walk into a room and people feel the shift, not because you told them who you are, but because your results make it obvious. There's a level of personal growth where explanations become irrelevant. When you're in alignment with your goals, your habits start doing the talking for you. You wake up early, you stay consistent, you turn down distractions, you invest in your mindset, you execute. And guess what? Over time, those choices compound. They build something bigger than approval. They build legacy. Because people don't remember what you said you were going to do. They remember what you built, what you overcame, what you became. When you're locked in on your growth, your focus becomes a force. That means you start filtering everything through a results-first mindset. You stop asking, what will they think? And start asking, what will this produce? You become less emotional and more strategic, less reactive and more intentional. You move from explaining your journey to owning it. And in that shift, you access a power that most people never tap into, the power of silent discipline. Silent discipline is where elevation happens. That's when you wake up with no applause, no recognition, and no outside encouragement, but you still grind, still show up, still develop, because you know the applause isn't the goal, the outcome is. You realize your vision is too valuable to be diluted by needing constant external affirmation. That's maturity, that's leadership, that's purpose. When you produce results, the people who doubted you fall silent. The people who ignored you begin to pay attention. And the people who supported you, they celebrate. But none of that should be your fuel. The fuel is obedience to purpose. The fuel is knowing that you were designed for more, and that playing small, explaining yourself, or waiting for approval is no longer acceptable. You've outgrown the phase where you need to justify your decisions. You're in the phase where fruit speaks for itself. Even in Scripture, we're told, by their fruit you will know them, not by their words, not by their promises, but by their results. So if you want to silence the noise, shock the world, and fulfill your assignment, stop explaining and start producing. Wake up every day and ask yourself, what fruit will I produce today that proves my discipline, my faith, and my growth? People respect consistency more than charisma. Charisma can get you noticed, but consistency keeps you respected. And consistency over time creates massive results. So if you want to be respected without having to prove your worth with words, become obsessed with mastering your craft. Become relentless about the process. Keep watering the seed even when it looks like nothing is happening, because harvest doesn't come from hype. It comes from work. There's a danger in talking too much about your vision. The more you talk, the more you leak. Vision is sacred. Purpose is sacred. And when you open your mouth to explain what God is doing in your life before it's mature, you invite opinions that can distort your direction. That's why silence is strategic. It's not secrecy out of fear. It's protection out of wisdom. You're not hiding your progress. You're guarding it. You have to understand success has a frequency, and if you're not tuned into it, you'll be distracted by the noise of the crowd. Everyone has an opinion, but few have fruit. Everyone has advice, but few have authority. And authority doesn't come from shouting, it comes from showing. So don't aim to be loud. Aim to be legendary. Legends don't need to explain their impact, they embody it. You'll know you've stepped into a new dimension of focus when you stop responding to doubt with defense and start responding with development. You stop arguing with people about who you are and just show them. You let your work be the mic. You let your growth be the proof. You let your peace be the answer, because real confidence is quiet. Real power is calm. Real purpose is consistent. When you operate like that, you no longer need to convince people to respect you. You don't need to chase opportunities. You become the opportunity. Doors open, people notice. Influence expands not because you demanded it, but because you earned it. Results are the receipts of focus, and when you keep your eyes on your own paper, your progress, your potential, your process, you stop comparing. You stop competing. You start rising. And as you rise, the people who doubted, dismissed, or disrespected you will have no choice but to adjust their perception. Not because you changed who you are to please them, but because you became who you were meant to be in spite of them. So eliminate the need for explanations, replace it with execution, build something that speaks for itself. And when you do, you'll find that the people you were once trying to impress are now trying to figure out how you did it. But you'll be too focused to stop and explain, because your life will already be shouting what your words could never say. Your silence becomes loud when your growth becomes undeniable. In a culture driven by noise, where everyone wants to be seen, heard, and validated, there is something radically powerful about remaining quiet and focused while building something extraordinary. Silence, when paired with progress, speaks in a language that cuts through doubt, envy, and opposition. It's not the silence of inactivity, it's the silence of intentionality, the silence of someone too committed to their vision to be distracted by empty applause or cheap attention. There is a different energy that comes from people who are locked in on their own transformation. They aren't moved by trending topics or desperate to post every move they make. They're too busy doing the work, and the irony is, those who talk the least often achieve the most because they aren't trying to convince anyone. They're becoming. That's the essence of growth that cannot be denied. When someone elevates mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially, their silence becomes a statement that no words could ever match. Growth is loud when it shows up in your results, your habits, and your presence. When you've been quiet for a season and people start seeing a stronger, wiser, more disciplined version of you, it shakes their assumptions. It disrupts the narratives they may have written about you, because now you don't even have to defend your evolution. Your life does that for you. And that is what shocks people the most, not your speech, but your shift. When you decide to focus on yourself, you enter a zone of refinement. You start shedding the distractions, detaching from validation, and detoxing from people pleasing. It becomes less about being liked and more about being aligned. And when you're aligned, you stop broadcasting your moves and start mastering your purpose. That internal alignment makes external noise irrelevant. You no longer crave the spotlight because you understand something deeper. The true glow-up happens in the dark. The dark seasons are where character is built. It's where you grind without recognition, build without applause, and believe without support. That's where the real work happens, and when you emerge from that season stronger, focused, unshakable, you carry a different kind of authority. It's not boastful, it's not loud, it's not arrogant, it's solid, it's undeniable, it's magnetic, and it comes from knowing that you didn't get there by chance. You got there by choice. That's why silence is a strategy. It's not weakness. It's wisdom. It's the understanding that every word doesn't need to be spoken. Every move doesn't need to be announced. And every stage doesn't need to be accepted. You become selective about your energy, your time, and your circle. You start making decisions based on destiny, not desperation. And when you move like that, growth becomes automatic. Not because you're chasing success, but because you're cultivating it. People often misunderstand what it means to shock others with your growth. It's not about revenge. It's not about proving people wrong. It's about becoming so aligned with your purpose, so transformed in your process, that the old version of you becomes unrecognizable. That's the shock, when people look at you and realize that you didn't just improve, you evolved, that you didn't just level up, you rebuilt yourself from the inside out. When your growth becomes undeniable, people take notice even if they never say it. Some will be inspired. Some will be intimidated. Some will be silent because your transformation confronts their stagnation. But none of that is your concern. Your only concern is obedience to your assignment. You're not here to impress people. You're here to maximize potential, to multiply what you've been given, to break cycles and elevate generations. And that kind of mission doesn't leave room for performance. It demands focus. That's why the most powerful thing you can do is keep growing in silence. Because silence is sacred. It protects your mind from unnecessary opinions. It guards your spirit from comparison. It shields your momentum from sabotage. When you grow quietly, you keep your power contained. And when the time is right, your fruit will reveal what your mouth never had to say. Think about a tree. It grows in silence, day by day, root by root, branch by branch. It doesn't announce its growth, but one day it provides shade, bears fruit, and stands firm in storms. That's what real growth looks like. It's slow, it's intentional, it's invisible at first, but when it manifests, it transforms the entire environment. You become like that tree, rooted, unshakable, productive, and the best part, you never had to broadcast your journey. You just had to commit to it. Sometimes the greatest act of power is not reacting, not explaining, not posting, just working, just improving, just rising, because every minute spent proving is a minute not improving. You don't owe anyone an explanation for prioritizing yourself. You don't need permission to isolate and grow. You don't have to justify your boundaries. When you start honoring yourself, you disrupt everything that was keeping you small. And that disruption is loud, even in silence. When you become a person of discipline, people notice. When you heal and stop entertaining chaos, people notice. When you stop showing up in places that don't align with your worth, people notice. You don't need to say a thing, because the energy of someone who is serious about their life radiates differently. It humbles some. It confuses others, but it empowers you, because now you're no longer addicted to being seen. You're committed to being whole. This is what Myron Golden would call operating from a higher law, a spiritual law, the law that says what is sown in private will be reaped in public. That if you stay faithful to the small things, God will elevate you to greater things. And when you operate on that level, you understand that silence is not passive, it's powerful. It's not the absence of movement, it's the presence of maturity. Maturity teaches you that not everything requires your voice. Sometimes your silence is your strength. When you stop responding to disrespect, stop defending your decisions, and stop announcing your every move, you create space for clarity. And clarity sharpens vision, and vision fuels direction. That's how you start moving different, not because you're better than others, but because you're more focused on becoming better than you were. So now you walk different, you talk less, but your presence says more. You don't try to convince people. They either see it or they don't. You don't chase opportunities, you attract them. You don't demand respect, you command it through how you carry yourself. That's what happens when your growth is real. It announces itself even when you don't. The version of you that's going to change everything is quiet right now. Studying, building, healing, working, and when it's ready, it won't need to speak. It will simply show up. And when it does, every person who overlooked, underestimated, or misunderstood you will have no choice but to acknowledge that something powerful happened, and they missed the moment because they were too busy listening for noise, not watching for growth.